carbon fiber detector shafts are so important with the counterweight, we have to understand balance first. A couple ideas around balance, right? So I'm going to take this pole, and if we hold this pole in the middle, you can see I can literally pretty much balance it on 1 or 2 fingers, and it's very easy for me, incredibly easy. This is perfect balance, right? The weights are equal on either side. And we inherently pick objects up like this by the middle, right? You're picking up a 2x4 piece of wood, you pick it up by the middle. Why? Because if you tried to pick that 2x4 up and carry it around like this, or even like this, you would inherently know that that's very inefficient, right? You don't even need to think about it. Your body knows it's inefficient. It's telling you it's inefficient because of the strain it's putting on your forearm, your bicep, and your shoulder, and your back. Well, now we're looking at swinging detectors with heavy coils. Not only heavy coils, but at first glance you might think now, oh, this end is only heavier because the weight of this end does not no longer equals this. That's not so. The force of gravity coming down creates torque, right, which causes more strain for the arm. So there's actually a mathematical equation where the higher I lift this, the heavier it gets. So this now weighs many, many, many more times what it would weigh if we were to just saw it off and weigh it on a scale. In fact, it's weighing more and more and more as this angle to my elbow changes. Okay? So now we take that in terms of swinging a detector around. We say, oh, well, you only have to lift the detector a little bit off the ground, right? Well, again, automatically, you can see my body is compensating, right? Compensating for the lack of balance. Okay? Anytime the body has an imbalance, it's going to compensate, make up for lack of balance. If there's something that's lifting heavier at this end, well, either the muscles have to kick in or the body has to lean a certain direction. See, I can make this pole lighter by leaning backwards because I'm sending my body weight back that way. But now what's that doing to my back? So that's how compensation works. Either muscles strain to hold the detector up via the pulley systems of muscles, right? Or the skeleton strains to counterbalance itself to the actual weight that it's trying to lift. And we know that because we've moved our home, we've tried to lift heavy boxes up. We get tired, we start to lean back into it. Afterwards, your back aches. Okay? Well, habitual movement patterns where you're holding up something heavy, even if it's slightly heavier, well, if you're swinging it for 5-7 hours at a time, this metal detector, and it's causing you to strain in your muscles and your bicep, your deltoid, that's going to put a lot of wear and tear on your body. So it's almost like car suspension. If your car suspension is out of alignment, you're not going to notice it. But if you told a mechanic that you were going to drive your car for 5-10 years with your suspension out of alignment, yeah, he would have some problems with that. He'd tell you your car's going to go to crap right away. And again, same with the body. You might be able to swing this detector around and feel pretty confident that it's not too bad for years, but after a while that's going to have a lot of wear and tear on your body because you don't realize how it's compensating to accommodate for the lack of balance. Okay, so how do we balance this machine? Well, right now, again, we have the 15-inch coil on the Equinox. Right now, we can see that it's actually not balanced with the control box at the normal point the control box is at on your stock shaft and on Steve's shaft. Right? And all the weight is in the 7-inch counterweight. All the lead weight is put inside these, all these little weight sacks. So now, if it's not balanced, and I'll show you how I figure out it's not balanced. Well, one, right? I hold it with my forefinger here, right? And it drops up against my elbow. It pushes up against my elbow here. I hold it with my middle finger, and it's still pushing, right? The arm cuff is still pushing up against my forearm slightly. Right? So that means it's still going to pull my shoulder forward, especially after a long period of time. The bicep strains, the strains, and the front of the deltoid strains. I hold it with my pinky finger. It also drops. What we want is your index and pinky finger to be rudders, and your two middle fingers here to be where the weight balances perfectly. Meaning this doesn't push up against the bottom of your forearm, and this doesn't push down against the top of your forearm. It just feels like it's floating there. It's also important when you do this test that your posture is good. Most people, in fact all people that I watch metal detecting, all develop a posture where they're hunched forward like this. You can imagine that this is not efficient, right? Hours like this, your head forward, your shoulders forward, all these muscles in your back are straining to hold the enormous weight of your upper body up for long periods of time. Not only that, but you're habitually putting your shoulder in this position. This can cause a lot of disc degeneration and anterior shoulder, rotator cuff issues, as well as other stuff that we won't get into. And I'm a retired physical therapist, so I look at this from that perspective. So the way we fix the issue of balance with the 15-inch coil specifically is by drilling multiple holes ourselves in the Steve's Detector shafts that we sell. All right? So now I can adjust my control box down, and I can adjust my arm cuff down. How do I figure out what's perfectly balanced for my body height? Well, I'm 6 foot exactly, and what I'm going to do is I'm now going to measure from the joint here where it slides to the joint of the coil. And then once I mark down that measurement, I'm going to shorten the shaft deliberately, a few inches. And then I'm going to do my balance trick. I'm going to put it on my index finger, and now that's very different, and my middle finger, and it's still drops a little bit, so I'm going to shorten it a little bit more. And then on the pinky finger, it will go up against your forearm, the bottom of your forearm. On your index finger, it should kind of float up a little bit. You can see that it's still not doing that. This is a very heavy coil. Once it's far enough out in front of you, it multiplies its weight, as we noticed before. So now it's on my index finger. Now it's starting to float up a little bit twisted. Okay? And I do this until I can balance it on my middle finger and it doesn't push up against the bottom of my forearm. So this can go on for a little while. There, it's just getting there. Okay, now once I have the difference in measurement, I'm going to take that. Let's say the difference in measurement between what I've shortened it to now and what it was when it was at perfect length is, let's just say it was 4 inches. Well, let's say 3 inches. I'm going to then take this control box down about 3 inches, so 3 or 4 notches, so I don't have to unscrew the control box and screw it in a million times. That would be very annoying. The other trick that I've learned is to only use 1 screw when you're testing and getting this set up and rigged for yourself. That way, again, you don't have to screw all 4 screws in. Don't forget, you're also going to have to unscrew and screw your arm cuff in so that it's lower. And then also, not to forget, your shaft is actually going to extend out longer this way. So I'm going to adjust it so that it is good for my height, and then we'll get back to you. Okay, I'm back, and I've adjusted my control box down just 3 notches, about 3 inches or so, maybe a little bit more, 3.5, almost 4 inches, like I said before. And I've adjusted my arm cuff down so it's right underneath my forearm, and it's massively different. Look what happens when I balance it on my index finger, just my index finger. It floats up almost, right? And now on the middle finger, the most important one, and the middle finger, remember, is in the middle. You want it to be in the middle, right? And it's just barely tapping against the bottom of my forearm, and then the pinky, obviously it's going to drop. Remember, the index finger and the pinky are just rudders. They're just keeping those subtle, soft up and down motions in check, while really you're balancing the detector in those two middle fingers. All right? And I can't even tell you how much lighter this detector feels. It feels like I'm carrying a feather right now. So when people talk about the Garrett ATX being too heavy and all these detectors being too heavy, none of that matters. All that matters is how balanced is the detector? And are you really taking into the equation of torque, torque into the equation? Okay, that's very important. Remember, this weight does not equal the weight of your coil. You cannot figure that out, right? You have to use physics equations if you're really going to do that, and that would require a lot of math. It's much better that you just do this and you feel it for yourself and you mess around with the different heights. So again, what you're looking for is a balance of about half an inch off the ground here, right? See? So I've lengthened my shaft so that what you don't want to do is do this test and hunch over. You can't pull your shoulders back like this. That's compensating. Just relax and stand tall. The weight of the detector should hang from under your armpit down here and under your elbow down here. It should never feel like your bicep or your shoulder are doing work at all. Right? That means you're already in compensation mode. The weight of the detector, in other words, should hang down through your skeleton. That's how all weight should hang when you're carrying something, down through your skeleton. That's why it feels lighter, because there's an absence of the sensation of effort. When there are sensations of effort, that means your body is already struggling, compensating. When there is no sensation of effort, like when you pick up a piece of wood and it's perfectly balanced, that's the kind of quality that we're looking for. So why is this so important for the 11-inch coil, right? Or maybe you're 5 foot tall and you say, I don't need that much weight. My detector shaft is going to be shorter, and therefore this isn't going to weigh as much, right? Because it's the moment arm, it's called, is going to be shorter. That you're right, but no, you're still going to need this 7-inch, right, counterweight for the 15-inch coil. And listen, you can always take weight out of this counterweight, and guess what? It's not going to weigh as much. People are so obsessed with the weight of this counterweight adding to the detector. That's not what you should be thinking of. Remember, when you carry something heavy and the weight of it goes down through your skeleton, it feels like a feather. So the amount that you're carrying is not as important as the balance of the detector. Remember that. If we're being smart, we're going to think that way. So if, let's say, I don't want to swing with as much weight. I just don't want to swing 7 hours with an extra few ounces in this, just because that's who I am. I'm going to take some weight out of this, and I can move my control box down further, and then therefore move this back further, and now the detector is balanced. See? So you can still, this costs the same, right? Both counterweights cost the same price. So you're not losing anything by buying this and just taking some lead weight sacks out of it and moving this counterweight back while you're swinging your detector. And you're just being smarter that way. Because now you got something that can balance your 15-inch coil and your 11-inch coil with less weight in it, right? So that's all we're working with here, is the adjusting our control box and our arm cuff, and possibly being able to remove some weight depending on what coil you're using. And it's really that easy. It's just a matter of trial and error and using my technique of making sure that, right, when it balances on the index finger, it should go up like this a little bit, almost parallel to the ground. When it balances at the bottom, you don't have to use your pinky finger, right? You can use your index. There, closest to the shaft, it's going to go down. And when it balances in the middle, it should look just about like that. And then most importantly, again, when you're doing it with your arm through the cuff, when it balances in the middle, it should neither push up against the bottom of your forearm nor push down against the top of your forearm. It should feel like it's just effortlessly balanced there while holding just straight and natural posture with the coil half an inch above the ground. And that's it. You can always call us and email us with any questions. And remember, I'll say it again, we drill these extra holes in the shaft. You will not get these extra holes unless you order from us.